the agenda, so you got all a little boring background. You know, the problem with writing a good bio is that either you lie a lot or you have to live up to the expectations.
Or a little both.
All right, I'm going to be talking a bit today about something we've been talking about a lot, and that's planning our sustainable future. And my topic is something I've personally been working on called the Center Sustainability Master Plan, which I call basically Center Sustainability. But you folks are about Watershed, as you pointed out many times, and what I'm looking at is how the two plans fit together, but more than that, I'm looking at how the Watershed may take an active leadership in putting this together. So this presentation is going to last about 30 minutes if I stick to the script. So if you've got questions, jot them down and we'll get to them at the end. So my content is just overall is I'm going to take a look at where we've been. And we've been having a lot of discussion about that, so I'm going to kind of breeze over it. This presentation will be available for all the boring detail if you would like to have it. I'm going to focus a lot on the fact that we need to get it together. I'm going to bring up that ugly question of what is sustainability. And I'm going to talk about a number of new ideas such as community ecosystems. I'm going to outline what I've been doing with Center Sustainability, the master plan, and I'm going to tell you about something I mentioned a couple meetings ago about our new development paradigm called 3B33, which is $3 million in private sector revenue in 2033. So, in a sense, this is a lot like a little psychoanalytic session. I'm going to be doing a little bit of regression into the past, and I'm going to be looking at what values have been motivating us, but also what Dr. Floyd might call inhibitions and repressions. So maybe there's something there. But I came in on this in 2009, and you guys are doing something called the Sustainability Initiative. And you asked me to give a presentation exactly 5 years ago on models of sustainability, and 5 years later I'm still doing that. So I talked about then mostly Transition Town in Fort Dallas, which at the time was the poster child sustainable community in the United States. Like Love Canal, Ozone Hole, 3 Mile Island down the stream, popped the cork, and we had the energy crisis. So Clearwater was formed in 1980, but in 1983 the United Nations held a Brundtland Commission meeting, in which the word sustainability, at that meeting the word sustainability was pretty much thrown out. So it's still a little bit of timeline going back to 1996 to 2000, and I'm going to look at some of the sources or some of our expressions of Spring Creek values, the 1996 International Countryside Stewardship Exchange. That same year we had 2 public issue forums, the formation of the Spring Creek Watershed Commission and Association, a searchable bibliography a couple years later was done. Vision 2020 came along, and the Spring Creek Watershed Plan Phase 1 was produced during this period. So it was a very active period. So going back to the International Countryside Stewardship Exchange, and I'm just going to there it is. Just going to highlight some of these, but basically Clearwater was a leadership and a steering committee was put together. The overall goal, and I'm just going to go through this real quick. This, by the way, this document is available on the Watershed Association site. The overall goal was to manage the impact of growth. And what I've done is I've started putting some post-its on here to kind of capture some of the highlights of where we're going with this. So there was a local organization committee formed, and some of you guys were probably part of that. So and it looked at 6 issues, but essentially there were things like carrying capacity, economic sustainability, planning, and stewardship. So more posts. Identifying educational techniques and implementation technologies. And the one I want to focus on was the last one, which was defining the vision of the future of the Spring Creek Watershed. And what was said in that is, if the watershed residents can unite, can we together develop common goals and desires for the coming decades? And then the question is, how can we get people to invest in this vision? So a very strong emphasis on the idea of a vision. The two public issue forums, which I subsumed under one title. March 1996, it was called Seeking Common Ground, and it looked at three issues: perspectives of growth and the quality of life, implications on public policy, and strategies. So growth and the quality of life are the two highlights I came up with on this. They looked at four perspectives. One was the status quo, which I guess means doing nothing. Economic growth, just let the free market decide. Creating sustainable communities, and something about dealing with embattled downtowns. So November 1996, Sustainable Community of Communities looked at three possible futures. One is basically the free market, strengthening local communities, and defining what is ecological sustainability. There were over 200 participants involved in these forums, and their options include basically more meetings, but the focus of the meeting would be reducing ecological footprint. In a post-forum ballot, the majority favored concerted community action. The basic value expressed was quality of life, but there was a minority that looked at future one, which is let the free market do it. And when I'm getting into 3B33, I'm recycling back to the impact of the free market on how we plan the future. So the Spring Creek Watershed Commission and the Spring Creek Watershed Association, then community, were formed at this time. And we jump forward a couple of years to Vision 2020, living with I-99 rolling through the middle of our valley, and its effect on 23 municipalities, but mostly on the question of uncontrolled development, and these are sort of the details of that. The idea that came out of this is a very common one called maintaining the balance. And I've got that balance kind of highlighted and glistening because I want you to fix that in your mind, because I'm going to get to that. So what if we don't act? And that is probably the most important question you can ever get. What if you don't do this? So we get unplanned growth and all the difficulties that come with it. So they came up with 28 strategies. And if you think that's a lot, some municipal sustainability plans around the country have 100 or more. So they recognized that it was going to be a formidable challenge for the 23 communities that were affected by I-99, and they asked three questions. Basically, what can you do? Community members, municipal officials, and organizations, such as Clearwater, or the association. And they came up with a little package on sustainable visions. And among other things, is we will have a diverse economy. Well, 3B33, one of the things it's about is that we're losing the diversity of our economy. So, but we're going to have efficient transportation, but we're also going to have a healthy environment, and we're also going to work together. That was the vision. Well, if any of you have seen this report, I think most of you have. I think $500,000 went into it, and then it was just day events. It's sort of like running into a swarm of bees. So we begin to wonder, how can we handle all this? And I read that thing, so it was in my mind. But we were only just getting started. It turns out, I've heard many times, that Spring Creek is the most studied watershed in the state. We've got a lot of data. So I'm going to jump to something called the Spring Creek Watershed Plan Phase 1. This is also available at the Watershed Association. It had a goal to distill numerous existing plans, research, and data into a clear and concise statement of the challenges facing this watershed and recommending ways that the citizens can meet these challenges. But also, about this time, the searchable database was put together. I think Bob Carline took the lead on that, and compiled about almost 300 studies in an accessible format. Now, there's a little bit broader context I found of this in the Spring Creek corridor study, which started in 1994, which was 20 years ago. 20 years, it's about half the time Moses spent in the wilderness, so we've got a ways to go. But the mission of this original study was, again, protecting and enhancing, planning, cooperation, and looking at future generations, so more post-it notes. like I said, I'm skimming over this. All the details are on the presentation. One of the most important outcomes of the 1994 effort was to get the International Countryside Stewardship Exchange team to come here. So, there's a document called Spring Creek Rivers Conservation Plan Executive Summary, which kind of brings a lot of this together. The planning grant, Clearwater got a planning grant from the DCNR to put together a rivers conservation plan. And the Spring Creek Watershed Community Association and Clearwater Conservancy are eager to move forward with the implementation of the recommendations of the Spring Creek Rivers Conservation Plan. And highlighted here is something called a watershed plan. So again, we're looking at 2001, 13 years ago. So fast forwarding up to 2009, when I came in, we had the sustainability initiative, and obviously in the first decade of the century, there was a lot of stuff that went on. Did the searchable database get updated? No, it did not. It's a paper file over at Clearwater, which has a paper index. So there's nearly 300 studies in this thing, but like I said, it's nearly 15 years out of date. The Sustainability Initiative had its own mission statement, and basically to protect and enhance the natural resources of the watershed now and into the indefinite future, which is a classical definition of sustainability. But it did a more than that through careful planning, conscientious use, and conservation. So again, that word pops up. The goal was to promote conscientious use, meeting our current needs without compromising the future. Again, that's a classical sustainability definition. So I'm going to fast forward another few years to last year, and Paul Bartley put together a document called Spring Creek Watershed Association Evolved. And in those few years, a lot more stuff actually did happen. Among those was the Center Region put a sustainability chapter in the comprehensive plan. And another of those, which I think is major, is the PSU Sustainability Institute was officially formed. So a couple major things that were on our map. But Paul outlined a number of threads that we had followed. The Sustainability Initiative for a couple of years, the recharge map, water protection, the State of the Association, which became the conversation last year. I added to that, we also had the Brandywine Conservancy come in and do a major public presentation. But the real question that's coming out of this is conversation about what's next, define and refine our mission. And that conversation has continued. We had, earlier in the year, we had a great stormwater workshop. Brought a lot of people together, but it also got a lot of opinions floating on the surface. 2 months ago, we met at New Leaf to review our mission and ask where we go from here. Last month, we had a joint meeting with the commission, and as Bob Donaldson put it, and I think very aptly, the question is, what do we need to do to sustain these organizations, the association and the commission? So putting all the post-its together on one board, look at issues, and basically the issue of growth comes up time and time again. The values that we're trying to pursue: quality of life, capacity of the watershed, protection and enhancing natural resources, that word balance, conscientious use, reducing ecological footprint, the tools, vision, goal, collaboration, stewardship, concerted community action kept coming up. And the resources, we have a lot of data. We know we have to distill it into a plan, but we have to get to the plan. All right, so define sustainability. I've heard a number of you, a number of times says you can't define sustainability. And you got a precedent. If you need something in black and white, it came out of the Sustainable Community of Communities in 1996. And it says, if you think the use of the term sustainability is unclear and confusing, you're not alone. Well, I'm going to put that statement in the box. But I don't believe it. So what it boils down to is a question of growth versus sustainability. And again, I often hear that sustainable growth is an oxymoron. There's a contradiction there. You know, in our mind, there's a contradiction. So what I'm going to do is take a little excursion into the field of formal logic. And most of us, I think all of us, we are educated planners, rational thinkers, very logical in our approach, use a lot of data. We do a lot of deductive thinking. And the classical example of this deductive thinking is the syllogism, all men are mortal, Socrates is man, therefore Socrates is immortal. The argument that we've got, and is considered to be a pretty sound argument, is we have a sustainable environment. We have a growth economy. Therefore, we have sustainable growth. And it's logic. But in formal logic, there is a rule that contradictions cannot exist. And the way that works is if you seem to have a contradiction, check your premises, one is wrong. So what's wrong is I'm going to say is this word balance. The balance of growth in the environment. We use that all the time. That is the key word. That is the keystone of the whole sustainability argument. That we can have a balance between growth and the environment. So let's take a picture. The outer circle is the environment. And this little wedge is growth. And if you think of it, it's a little bit like Pac-Man, you're not really wrong. What we have on the outside in the environment is the fact that we can't create any more land, we can't create any more water, we can't create any more pores. Development eats them up. So what this is basically is a zero-sum game. The more development takes, the less environment is going to be. So when you talk about balance, what you're really saying is, let's get the glutton to take smaller bites. It just may take another day or two for the cake to be gone. So that is contradiction. You cannot logically and sanely think of our ecological future in terms of balance between consumption and something we can't create anything more of, non-renewable resources. But I need to point out that there is something that's probably even worse than growth and development, and that would be economic decline. And last month, Lori sent out a little thing that the governor was going to cut a lot of conservation money out of the budget. Well, here's another balance. It's called balance the budget. The state's $1.5 billion in debt. Last week, the governor did sign the budget, and over half of conservation and natural resource funds were in fact cut. So there's your balance. So putting it all together, we've got to get around the table. We've got to create our map. And who are you going to call to the table? Well, we got the usual suspects: government, business, nonprofit sector, grassroots. And I'm going to add something else to this that you might not have considered, and that is a new class of for-profit corporation, the benefit corporation and the L3C. Last November, I gave a presentation on the Oberlin project. They came out with their new plan in 2013. And basically, they use something called full spectrum sustainability. It is a comprehensive sustainability plan. And the icon they use for this is the project has all of these pieces connected to it. I also have been doing a survey of the sustainability initiatives. I've got a list of something like over 400 around the country. And I've been doing a review of the literature on sustainability, studying how they're put together and how effective they work. And basically, there are relatively few sustainability plans that are even comprehensive. And what the literature is suggesting is that there is a huge disconnect between vision, planning, and implementation in these ways. So the problems that we kind of feel we're having, a lot of other communities are having as well. And some of the work that Transition Towns have been doing over the last year or so, trying to map out all of these sustainability organizations, I came up with something I call community ecosystem mapping. And the idea there is that community is an ecosystem just like a forest or a lake, or for that matter, Spring Creek is. I did an article that I put on all my blog sites if you want to get into the excruciating details. But basically, an ecosystem consists of three things. There's nodes or entities, which can be organizations or people or projects. There's connections between them, but by far the most important thing that happens is the exchanges in those connections. So this is a diagram that was put together by the founding of ecosystems, Howard Odom, which is basically a flow chart. It's got feedback loops and connections and everything else. But he actually defined the ecosystem as an economic system in terms of the exchanges that went on within it. So last year, Serena Fulton at Newly put together an online database called PSU Connect. It was mostly for students. It had about 200 references in it. When she became co-director of Newly, she couldn't support it, so I picked the thing up. And I now got 470 lines of resources in that. So that's sustainable related projects, people, organizations, programs in this area. And the way I take a look at that is it's sort of like a puzzle. In fact, I've got about 30 or 40 more I've got to put on this. I'm just getting behind on maintenance. But we've got a puzzle there of all these pieces, and I think most of us know it that are working every day. But what we didn't get was the box with the picture. So we have no idea what this picture is going to look like once we get it put together. So we've got this maelstrom. We got lots and lots and lots of everything. But let's put this in perspective. From the time our ancestors started looking up at the sky, the night sky, in wonder, they began connecting the dots. So they imposed things out of their experience over these little patterns of stars, and they came up with the things, Ursa Major is the big bear, Leo is the lion. So, they put things around the dots. And all of us that are outdoor people know that at night, the two stars in the Big Dipper point to the pole star, which indicates the direction of north. So there's even bigger patterns out there. Today, in the 21st century, we've got a little bit more sophisticated stuff to deal with. And it's mostly social networking architecture, which did come out of ecosystems. It allows us to put together very, very complex ways of association. It's totally nonlinear. You don't have to put things in a line. But the thing that I'm liking the most about this is it's organization by discovery, not by imposition. So there are inherent patterns in there that we can discover and we can make them work. So if I apply community ecosystem mapping to the Overland project, the symbol that they use, we find that everything is connected to everything else in some way. And as David Orr, the founder of the Overland Project, said, he recognized this in a speech he made last November. He said if you put together a full spectrum sustainability project, you're going to have lunches with a lot of people. So, sustainability issues, climate, resources, economy, society. One of the ways we look at this is a Venn diagram where sustainability is an intersection, and a lot of people don't really like that. So we use the bullseye diagram, which the environment is the full model within which is society, within which is an economy. With community ecosystem mapping, we kind of get rid of all of those circles and look at this as a network, as an association. Again, everything is connected to everything. Each one of these major components has its own network, and every one of those networks has an awful lot of overlap. So developing this model, we're getting to the point where we understand conceptually there's a lot of people that are working on it, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on it. But I think it's going to be a killer app in the type of work that we do. So center sustainability, where is it? It's essentially Spring Creek Watershed. But by osmosis, it may go out into Penns Valley, into the Penns Creek area. Again, that's something that's going to have to be discovered and imposed. But as a natural ecological relationship, the Spring Creek Watershed is natural, both as a make Center County sustainable? Well, I keep pushing we've got to have a master plan. But getting to the master plan involves asking 5 questions. And look at these. So why do you need a plan? There's a lot of good reasons for a plan. Collect and organize the facts, and we've got plenty of those. Create a vision, create a mission, achieve consensus among people, establish standards and guidelines, formulate policy, organize stakeholders, inform the public, and. These are the reasons for creating a plan. Now, Dwight David Eisenhower, former president, former supreme commander of the Allied invasion of Europe, a master strategist and logician, planned the biggest invasion ever, famously said that plans are worthless. But planning, he stressed, is everything. And I kind of like the French philosopher Pascal, the way he put it. His fortune favors the prepared. The fact is that the leading cause of failure in businesses and IT projects, which I was a part of, is the lack of good planning. So about 80% of businesses we know fail, and about 70% of IT projects fail. But so do 90% of ant colonies. So on the balance, we're not doing so bad.
What is your source for the ant colony data?
That doesn't seem right.
E.O. Wilson.
Pardon?
E.O. Wilson.
Thank
It
you.
was something he did on a television, and it stunned me when he said it. So, like I said, we're not doing so bad on the balance. All right, so what is the Center Sustainability Master Plan? Right now, it's mostly a template, which I'm beginning to fill in the dots. But it's got several components and a lot of modules. It's got a section on current local consumption. And I keep asking, if you don't know what you're consuming, how can you plan a sustainable future? And it's not the dollars you spend on stuff, you actually have to define the pounds, the quarts, the gallons, and where it comes from. So that leads to the question of external dependencies versus what we can do with our own local resources. Like if we produce much more local food than we do? The answer is yes. And that all leads to the question of what in transition town is being called re-economy with a capital R-E, which is looking at production-centered local economies. So component 2 is the major modules of this plan, and there's the vision, and the vision is restoration and self-reliance. It's not balance, it's restoration. It includes things like food, transportation, waste, energy, blah, 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 blah. Land, water, and natural resources come up, but I'm still working at the top of the list. So it's going to take, depending on the number of people that are involved, it's going to take a good long while to put this together. So component 3 is implementation, and it looks at the economy. And I need to tell you that what I'm looking at is economically based, not just social good. It's economic good that's involved in this. Requires finance and enterprise. Community ecosystem mapping, I think, is going to be important. There's a question of how the project's going to be planned and how the community is going to be organized around it. It's going to take a lot of innovation, and I'm going to keep stressing this. Eco-entrepreneurship, education and outreach, leadership development, and communications infrastructure. Each of these is a module or a chapter of the plan. So it's already in the outline. And it's not the only way to do it, it's the way you like to put it together. Appendices, including critical resources, the things that are not so secure. Then you might want to look at creating more local alternatives for, an economic blueprint about how we can create this free economy, and the relevant documentation. What I have to stress in doing something like this is, first of all, vision. Right? Use a compelling image of vision. It has to be compelling. It has to be absolutely clear. It has to be a driving vision, and when you have that, you will mobilize the necessary intense passion to get this done. So without the vision, without the passion, it won't get done. It also requires innovation. If we keep expecting different results by classical definition of insanity. We've got to come up with some new ways of doing it. And it requires entrepreneurship. And that means people have to get out of the box and take the risk to do this stuff. And again, it becomes an economic model. Not what the government can do for you, but to paraphrase John Kennedy, what you can do for the government. So is this thing a plan? And plans too often are like pyramids. They're big, they're elaborate, they can be absolutely beautiful, but they have a tendency to sit together with us forever. Or is it a design? Design is a new metaphor coming out of the conversation today. Design includes dynamic networks, innovation, communication, cooperation, and probably fluidity is the bottom line. Is it a document or is it a process? Is it imposition or is it discovery? And these little questions challenge the way we look at planning. But most of all is the power of just getting things done. So there's a lot of practicality and pragmatism. Now I've been taking a look at what major corporations are calling sustainability. And there was a think tank, a business think tank, that looked at did some major studies on what corporations are looking at in terms of their future. But one of the things they asked is which resources were most at risk for these multinational corporations. The number one, by far and away, and they highlight this, I didn't, was water. 70% of multinational corporations consider water to be the most critical resource. Oil comes in second, and of course that's their source of energy, one of their sources of energy. Metals and other minerals comes in third, and in my opinion that's probably the most critical. Barbara gave me a little article on creating renewable energy resources. They depend on some of these minerals that are probably going to become very scarce long before they run out of oil. Plant-based resources, and the list goes on down. But water was the number one. Now, for a corporation at this level, and this is boardroom sustainability, this is not the social good of the corporation, the social responsibility of the corporation is putting on its brand. This is what happens in the boardroom. The issue here is survivability of the supply chain. Period. It's not preserving it. It's a question of how we get our share of it and how we beat out the competition. It is gaining competitive advantage. But my point is that what they're seeing is scarce is exactly the fact that we need to start thinking about in terms of how we can model our plan. So, water, it's the number one priority on the international list. It's your number one priority. A lot of you said you could only focus on it, and I'm going to tell you you have to focus on other things. But what I am telling you is this watershed group is not only a stakeholder in it, but it is a major stakeholder in this area. So there's a question of how you're going to proceed with this sustainability model. Because bottom line of water is it's not a cause, it's an effect. In November, Jason Dietar talked to us here in this room, and he talked about a threshold, which basically was impermeable structure versus trout. And how much land can we pave over and still have trout? So that's sort of the threshold question. But it's that question of growth versus sustainability. And apparently we're very close to that threshold. And in 2013, in the last year, continuing today, there is a lot to go on. So one of the things we've been talking about is the Lancaster Blueprint, which is an integrated water resource plan. And I have done a bulleted outline of this. It's available online. But I did a bulleted outline of the major features, the template, that's part of the blueprint. And what I'm highlighting here is it was prepared by a number of public agencies with a work group of roughly 7 people. What I want to emphasize is the planning process. And they had a lot of motivation to do this. But what it took was a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of people, which suggests there was a lot to the organization. Chapter 1 of the blueprint, the Lancaster Blueprint, and I bulleted these: the purpose, the strategic vision, the goals and objectives, the planning process, organization of the plan, So that's chapter 1. There's 5 more chapters. Water resource systems, strategic plan, roles and responsibilities, summaries of existing plans, tools and resources. There are appendices, bibliography, other resources, charts, maps, and tables. The same is profusely illustrated. So, what do we have? It's not quite as grand, but we do have something called the Spring Creek Watershed Plan, phase 1, like I said, available on the website. It's a little bit dated. It's not as comprehensive and as pretty as the Lancaster, but it contains a lot of stuff. There's a detailed solution matrix. There are chapters on surface water, groundwater, water supply, land use, and water resources. And there are 54 resources referenced. Like I said, it's available for download online. But I talked a little bit earlier about 5 questions. And the first of those is, do we want to develop a sustainable center county? Well, we've been asking that question since 1996. The next question I asked is, do we want to be a leadership in developing sustainable resources, a sustainable plan? And my response to that is, with the resources that we have in this area, if we take this on and do it, we will by default be one of the leaders. That genius factor we've got downtown, it's a resource. Who will form the Center of Sustainability and the Watershed team? And that's the most critical question that I've come up with today. It's got to take a group of people who you don't have to encourage to do it. They're chomping at the bit to get the job done. How will we organize the effort, the plan, implement, and finance it? But question number 5 is the most important question. Is sustainability an option or a mandate? And I'm taking a look at some of the things. I mentioned some of them in the course of this. Severe weather events every day. We're talking about severe weather events. I had people on a conference call last night that had to get off because a storm that just missed us was ravaging their neighborhood. They had to go batten down the hatches. The global economy, nowhere is strong. Energy is getting increasingly scarce and increasingly costly. Population growth unabated, increasing demand. And resource scarcity, as the multinational corporations are saying, is getting to be a survivability issue for them. So how do we preserve Spring Creek? Well, the watershed is part of a social network, and if we can put this social network web together, we can create synergy. And we do that through collaboration. And again, that's where I see the community ecosystem mapping as serving our needs. Let's look a little bit about the context of what we're doing with this. A lot of what we're doing is dealing with regulation. This is a difficult thing. It's usually a government thing. Conservation, which we are more interested in. Recreation, education. So those are the basic issues that we're looking at, and they do sort of constrain the context. But like I said, the watershed is more effect than cause. My friends in the Hudson River have a different perspective. For them, the Hudson River is a potential economic driver. Energy, transportation, a lot of things. And at one time, Spring Creek was the economic driver of this area. So one of the questions I keep asking is, can you create a watershed plan only with volunteers? And I think what we've been finding is that our volunteers are not amateurs, they're professionals. But there's something lacking in what we can do as individuals, despite all the energy and time we put into this. And I'm looking at the fact that we need to get a little more organized. Some last thoughts. Why a master plan? It gives us focus, it gives us connection, it makes it a community enterprise, and most of all, it gives us legitimacy. You're going to do something to tell people? What's their question? What's your plan? The sustainability paradox. Growth and sustainability are contradictory. Is economic growth, however, itself sustainable? A sustainable world requires a new economy. And you say, ha, 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 that's an impossible dream. No. problem can you solve? Non-governmental, governments are stretched to the limit. They don't have the money, they don't have the staffing to do this type of work. So somebody's got to step up and contribute to the effort, or maybe even take leadership. But I have to ask, who is government? Is it the people we elect to office, or is it us? And who ultimately is responsible? Again, somebody we assign the job, or us? And my conclusion is it's going to require a dynamic partnership. So balance versus restoration. That puts us in the innovation zone. But I have to say that there are hundreds of communities and tens of thousands of innovators out there who are looking at solving this problem. But my point is, looking at what we've got here, the State College is not unique, is one of the best prospects in the country. So 3D33, it's a dynamic new division for growth. It means $3 billion in private sector earnings by the year 2033. It's a 20-year plan. And my first question, and I talked to Todd earlier, the guy who came up with this, and my first question is, well, okay, $3 billion. How many people does that earn that much money? And the figures are just real rough. But I'm looking at probably 10,000 to 15,000 households. Now, one thing that we agree on is that these are probably going to be pretty robust incomes. There are going to be people who have good incomes. But there is a question of the impact on the environment. And the question that both Todd and I are looking at is potential for sustainable development. And the focus on this is generalized values. The kids that are coming out of Penn State now, how do we retain them and the knowledge and the skills and the entrepreneurship that can bring to our community? So a lot of them have a more sustainable, not all, but a lot of them have a more sustainable way of looking at the world. Eric Barron at CDICC a couple of weeks ago came out and supported this. Students have to have more entrepreneurship skills. And if you didn't see it, it was in the Senate guidance. But a really scary question is, could our sustainable future actually be secured through economic growth? That's a little different way of looking at it, isn't it? Should we need pro-growth? Well, the answer to that is no. It can be highly destructive. Unless you have a robust plan and a really dynamic leadership in place, where it went. It's going to happen. Or the other worst thing is, there'll be a long-term economic decline in which there's no money for regulation, monitoring, mitigation. So we get these little tanks of chemicals that sit in the cars like Slap Gap and Creek for 10 or 15 years, and all of a sudden bring a leak. So we don't want to go side of the ocean. New Leaf, we met there a couple of months ago. A number of us are members or partners of New Leaf. It is an innovation zone. It provides a tremendous amount of social networking. It has incredible community support. And I see it as a new paradigm social organization for our area. There's about 3,000 of these around the country, but for us, I'm seeing it as a really neat and interesting thing to have. And again, it's got that generalized population, the major focus of it. It's young, bright people who are trying to find their way in the community. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was this new form of corporation. Benefit corporations and L3Cs. I wanted to ask Kristen if her organization was an L3C. But basically, these are for-profit corporations. They're not non-profit. They are for-profit corporations. A for-profit corporation by law is required to return the maximum financial benefit to stakeholders. Benefit corporation idea is new. January last year, Pennsylvania put it into effect in the state. It was only the 12th state in the U.S. to do it. And it's still only about 20 states that have it. But what differentiates this is that these corporations are legally mandated to have a social or environmental mission. So rather than just profit, they can turn all their profit over to also some requirements of greater transparency. These things have to write a report every year on the benefit that they have produced. Some of them are for the purpose of sustainable activities, and some of them have a benefit officer. They may be making handkerchiefs or spoons or something, but they will have a benefit officer whose job will be to provide some benefit to the public. So, center sustainability. My foundation is Transition Center, which is one of the nonprofit organizations I put together. It's different from Transition Downstate College. I'm seriously studying making a B corporation. I had dinner Saturday night with one of the founding B Corp business owners. Got some good insight on that. What I'm looking at is we have to have a new way of thinking. There's nothing unusual about that. My perspective has been expanding through my participation in the Mid-Atlantic Transition Hub. I'm on the board. Over 7 states in the Mid-Atlantic region. So what I'm looking at is not only a sustainability plan for our area, but how we convert this into a template or a general application. And I've got a network there of about 30 people, including the board and a group that's called the council. So we are seriously discussing this. Our focus, not so much on social good, but on sustainable economics. How do we transform the economy in such a way that we can achieve not only balance but restoration? The Watershed Master Plan is a major component of that, and so it's something I can do myself. So it's a team that can get the job done. So with that, I'm at the end of my presentation. That's how to get in touch with me. I always know how to get in touch with me. So I will open the floor to questions and comments.
I guess, Bill, for me, I need you to explain 3B33 like I was a 5th grader. Explain it to me.
Okay. There's several assumptions with this one. 3B33 means $3 billion in 2033. Some of the assumptions on that is that the private sector of our economy in Spring Creek area has been shrinking significantly over the last 10, 20 years. Since state government education have been becoming a bigger and bigger piece of the pie. So what Todd Burley and friends are looking at is let's re-expand the shrinking private sector. So right now it's about $750 million annual revenue. And he is looking at expanding that to $3 billion, which actually is only a twofold expansion because of inflation by the time we get to 2033. So basically doubling the private sector.
Business, private.
Yep. And what he's looking at, Todd is a state college native, Penn State graduate, so he's very committed to this whole area. This is his roots. He's also one of the leading entrepreneurs in our area. He is the president of the community board. So, guy is pretty much committed to this. He is a driver in CC. And what his real emphasis is on how we get our graduating students into our economy as really high-level producers. And a lot of that is going to be high-tech stuff, but it could be all sorts of stuff. So we believe is sort of getting the innovation going for that.
So the idea of building business in this watershed, but doing it in a way that still maintains the water quality, the water quantity, the environment.
Not only maintain it, but restore it. Actually reverse the trend.
But I think a lot of time in my head I go business, impervious surface, the building for the business, But you're saying you do it.
The whole system
you do it the way.
is set up to do it the way it's being done. In order to reverse that, it's going to take a lot of new thinking, a lot of innovation. It's going to take a group of people that have the political muscle to start changing it. But we get back to that free market idea. For 20 years, the free market has been driving what we're doing. We have come up with sustainable blueprint for the
times that I've gone to at least 2 of the township meetings, every agenda is another development, here are the plans, here's phase 1, here's phase 2, blah, 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 blah. And I'm seeing the township councils having to deal with those developments, but I'm not hearing a lot from them questioning stormwater runoff or, how it's supposed to be in the plans, whatever. So I'm glad that you're saying that you're hearing more elected officials get into that. Because you and I and the rest of us can sit around here and come up with all sorts of great ideas, but unless those people start infiltrating the municipalities and keep questioning, is that really a good plan for this pointed out, this isn't just a college town and the, higher education community, but the watershed includes a bigger population that doesn't know what the heck the word sustainability is.
Well, even worse, there's a major section of the population, mostly outside of the state college, but versus most of the state of Pennsylvania, who think sustainability is versus what?
Yeah, I think, when I first heard it's like growing your own garden or something, having tomatoes in my backyard.
Well, these rednecks are good gardeners.
I think there are a few
Let me say something.
folks with
There's a Republican official that one of the best conversations we get is what's going on in the garden. Bob was next, I think.
Yeah.
First of all, let me commend you for having reviewed all the stuff that's going on here. It'd be good for all of us, especially you, to go back to think again about what's happened since. But then I wanted to ask you a specific question about, when we were trying to do the definition of 3B, yeah. You said something in the effect that the proportion of business that is carried on has shrunk with respect to the university.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That there is less
There's less private sector, private sector
proportion,
of our economy is shrinking.
in proportion to the university or in absolute terms.
Well, a lot of might be able to answer that better, but has university employment actually been increasing?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The big,
It went down for a little bit, and then
but the big thing is the shrinking of the private sector, closing a number of major plants that have occurred over the last decade or so. So a lot of people have just out of jobs.
Well, that's true. They look at what's happening. North Avenue. Major expansion of retail business.
Yeah, there is. It seems like every time they open a new retail space, there's vacant in someplace else. So again, it's good for development, but it doesn't mean the occupancy rate, probably the occupancy rate is falling.
And the other thing that has occurred in North Avenue is all these people who live in low-income housing, had to go somewhere else. And I don't think that's really, that benefits the businesses that are living in, but sure didn't help the people who had it.
Now, there is a lot of displacement in the result of that.
Seems like we've become just a retail mecca. I mean, we've lost our industry. We don't have Rockaway, we don't have Sierra, we don't have Morning, we don't make anything here anymore. We don't have any kind of factory in this county. And the center region known as this retail mecca for the rest of the county and for, outside center county. And because of that, then I don't know, we have, but we've ruined these small towns, People in Osceola Mills don't have any place. They got a dollar store, that's about it, and a beer distributor. Phillipsburg doesn't have very much. Spring Mills, they're all coming here to do the retail
I'm
shopping.
here to come to Walmart.
Walmart, Wegmans, we've ruined, I'm not saying we, but I think it's happened elsewhere either, like you take a town like Clarion, and they still have a viable downtown because they have a university there, but it's nothing, they have all this crap out there at the interchange, they've got all the, and it's a pattern, and I don't know how you fight against that. And I think we've done that. Like I know, like in Clarion, government money was poured into that, and they were really proud of it as economic development. But they took the guts out of the downtown. we've done it here, we've looked at Delphi. I mean, they,
Well,
you know, and they're all here on our ballot there. Instead of having little shops and viable, profitable shops in Belmont, we've got this strip of no ballot there. And I don't know how the average person fights against that.
Well, the average person doesn't. Again, it comes up with some type of economic innovation. Sometimes those are forced. All this new apartment build has had an impact on the traditional landlords in town. So the kids are moving out, a lot of them are moving away from the downtown area with all these nice little retail stores along Beaver and College Township in favor of moving out in those areas which are food deserts. May or may not be a grocery store within 1 mile. When there wasn't downtown area either. But it does change the dynamics, it continues to change the dynamics. If for any reason the enrollment in Penn State was to go into decline, it would have a pretty serious effect on local retail. So the retail is there, you know, what portion of our population, our census is actually students. And they're here today, gone tomorrow, but they need basic minimum housing, lots of food, and, you know, some of the basic stuff. So we have an economy, a retail economy that feeds that. Creating a higher income core group of people that are actually producing could change that retail environment, particularly if we took some of those areas that are getting weaker in terms of the economy, where the retail is moving elsewhere, and convert them into more concentrated living in economic zone. And all those little towns, like Phillipsburg, a lot of those towns around this area, that just, this is my concern. Could benefit from that type of model. But it has to be, the model has to be creative. It has to be economically viable. You can no longer expect government grants when you get this stuff done. So we're going to put together this model for revitalizing downtown anywhere. Somebody is going to have to design it. They're going to have to finance it. They're going to have to organize it. They're going to have to build it. So it's not a question of what we as individuals can do. It's literally a question of whether a group of people will get together and say, we're going to do something different. And it's going to pay for itself. And I think Mike's going to
We keep coming back to the situation of, you know, the community, people in the community, and my neighborhood just went through 3-4 months of the zoning battle, dealing with the increased amount of rental property and how the owner-occupied homeowners don't want to see that increase. So for most of us, it was the first chance we had to interact with our elected officials and, more importantly, the civil servants of our town. And after 3 or 4 months of that, I'm about order of magnitude more baffled as to what is driving the economy and the social interaction in my village. But every time they have a meeting, everybody stands up and pledges allegiance to the flag. Liberty, equality, justice for all. And then we sit down and things happen. Like something you see in a movie or a novel about the Middle Ages. So it kind of says to me like it's really, really hard to know the dynamic of the community, particularly the smaller ones, but they're also very diverse. So things like rednecks are good at growing food. Well, is that really true? I've seen some farms that are a horrible mess. But what I'm thinking about is there's no speaker scheduled for September or August. Maybe search around the, what did you call it, the Genius Factory down the road. Okay. And see if there's a sociologist or social scientist of some sort I think they go too far when the 19-year-old is coming to a community and sort of lecturing them about what they need to do without understanding how the community functions. And I kind of sense we ran into a little bit of that in the first Spring Creek Watershed meeting, where just the raw number of people, there was a very small minority of residents, and then this whole, usual characters of professionals. So
There are, like I said, there are hundreds of people at the university that have potential. One of the challenges of working with Penn State is that it has not been necessarily oriented to serve its community directly. And what Aaron was talking about a couple of weeks at CBICC is that we need to get more directly involved. Now, the model I use, a lot of these academic managers recognize that my own alumni at Arizona State University, and about 12 years ago, they hired a president whose sole job was to turn the university into an economic incubator. He also created the first PhD in sustainability. So we took an economic driver and created a major program in sustainability. And all Crow did was did an undergraduate in environmental studies and ran the world-class environmental scientist. So we look at the prospect. We've got to develop them. We can't just sort of occur. There's lots of problems. To look at the problems, we wouldn't have anything. The question is getting a group of people who are willing to break through these. A core group of people who have that vision and passion that we're going to do this. In Phoenix, one of the other things we have is a group called Phoenix 40. There were 40 individuals in government, business, religion, higher education. These folks got together many, many years ago. And what they were famous for is that they very quietly guided the destiny of the city. And we need something like that.
Bill, I want to keep track of the time. It's 8:45, so maybe one more question and we go from
Yeah.
business end.
My hope is that we keep this conversation going and Jim getting to the table and bringing a core group together to be absolutely essential at this point for our moving forward. All right.
You went over an awful lot of material. One particular slide was a little intimidating when you see it. What was the list of all the components of the sustainability plan? We all know it when you read it, but when you see it up there, it's like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of work there. But to grab, you said a couple other things, so to grab something a little bit more bite-sized and that focuses on water maybe, which is what this group is kind of about, is you talked about the tipping, how close are we already past it, who knows, but you can argue that position, but the fact is that one of these days, if we're not there, we're going to be pretty soon. And I wonder if there's a challenge that's also related to the development that's come up several times, smart development, stuff like that. Why don't we circle the wagons in an attempt to challenge all the municipalities to put a cap on impervious surface? And figure out, now, think about that for a minute. I mean, it might be what we need to do in this region to protect Spring Creek and protect our groundwater, but you're going to impose restrictions on all the landowners who want to develop their property.
Yeah, you are going to do that.
Yeah.
One of the things we got out of the
quite a bit of property, so, that if we're gonna do something over here, and in order to keep our impervious surface from growing campus-wide, we decided, all right, we need to do 3 things over here. And so it's even easier for us to attempt to try to work that out. And we didn't succeed. It's like so hard to do that. So imagine in a community where everyone's a landowner and their borders are like right here, and they can't necessarily like say, all right, we'll do 3 things over there because they don't own those properties, nor, you know, maybe the people who own them don't have any
some stormwater.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a symposium, I don't know that that's a formal
Yeah.
event yet. That was like the stakeholders that got
Okay.
put together as part of the grant, to now saying, without the grant, now what do we do?
Right.
I think that part of it, that it's gonna be
Oh,
Lillian,
A
something.
symposium, a summit in the fall.
Yeah.
So that would be the public thing that I think that group is working towards.
And Barbara, you're dying to say something. We gotta let Barbara.
That's why income tax. I see that, this is just my own perspective, that we should, as an organization, try and figure out how we can get a hook on a watershed management plan. That's the component that I could see that we could have of this bigger sustainability umbrella type thing. That's the part you were saying, Jen, and I'm hearing that from somebody else, that where do we fit in? What are the steps we can take? I also see that he needs help with his table, getting players at his table for the bigger umbrella. But we could do this sustainability watershed management plan, try and help get that implemented. So that is a role model for that, and that is in Lancaster. They have a wonderful sustainability management plan that Julie Kohler led me to, and you can see it on the computer, and he has access to that. He's been studying it. I told him about it. So that would be a great role model, and it features implementation. That is the key word there. How do you make it happen? Okay, so then we've got this lady coming, hopefully from Maryland, at the commission in September, and everybody should be there that night when it happens, or whenever he's able to get that, when Denny is able to get her to come, because she could perhaps provide be the professional catalyst to make something more specific happen if we could get financial support for her. And that to me is a very important part of the whole process. And those are
Well, that's a good point. Monica Billig is who you're referring to. She was at the stormwater workshop that we did many months ago. And Denny is asking her to come to the commission, and it can be with any of our members also, to help us to focus and figure out what's our next
So even
step
if she
for
could
action.
define a chunk of the watershed management plan and do, get it in specific, in the detail specific.
Which brings us to the business meeting agenda item, June joint meeting discussion and summary. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.